Hello there, it's your weekly horoscope columnist Christopher Renstrom, and I'm delighted to announce that my much anticipated course with Astrology Hub, the Cosmic Calendar, is now open for enrollment. The Cosmic Calendar is designed to teach you how to turn your birth chart into a personal calendar, one that's uniquely aligned to your natural flow and personal seasons. You'll be able to look at the year ahead and know exactly how to plan your life. Whether you're looking to launch a business, dive back into the dating pool, or finally get around to writing that book you said you'd get around to writing one day, the Cosmic Calendar will help you to identify the best times of year to pursue your dreams. So, if you want to join me for the Cosmic Calendar, you can enroll today by going to astrologyhub.com/cosmic calendar. That's astrologyhub.com/cosmic calendar. It begins on March 3rd. I am so looking forward to seeing you there. We're going to have a lot of fun.
Welcome to your weekly astrological weather. This is your place to get practical guidance for not only surviving, but thriving with the cosmic tides. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to your weekly astrological weather. My name is Amanda Walsh. I'm the founder of Astrology Hub, and I am here with historian, author, and astrologer Christopher Renstrom, one of our very favorite astrologers here at Astrology Hub. So much of a favorite that we are actually doing a course with him, a 3-week course in March, based on Christopher's book, The Cosmic Calendar, which helps you take your personal chart and turn it into a calendar. So you know when to do things, when not to do things, when's the most auspicious time to launch that new project or finally write your book, whatever it is that you've been wondering about in terms of timing. This class is going to help you map it so that you can see those windows and really work with the energy or the flow of the universe in a very positive way. So, Christopher, do you want to say anything about the class? We're getting so excited to launch this to all of our students.
I'm so excited about teaching it. It's just I have lots of people saying I've enrolled for the class or whatever, and it's just like it's just I'm so excited about the whole thing. No, Cosmic Calendar. Cosmic Calendar is we talk a lot about transits and transits impacting our chart, but with Cosmic Calendar, what you get is this idea that there is a timing to your life. There is a personal calendar to your life that exists, whether there are transits going on or not. So basically what you do is you can weave the transits into what's going on, but this notion that you have your own personal timing for things, I feel kind of takes something which can be arbitrary like transits and puts it on a course that's more deliberate and more personal and more knowable. And so that's what we're going to be really uncovering and unpacking in this course on the Cosmic Calendar.
And the production value that's coming together, you're going to see lots of beautiful imagery. Christopher, lots of art. So Christopher has studied a lot of art history and brings that in with the astrology, which is really, really compelling. And it just helps it come to life in a whole different way. Yeah. So Christopher, okay, if you want to join that class, you go to astrologyhub.com/cosmic calendar. That's astrologyhub.com/cosmic calendar. And class starts on March 3rd. You have until now and then to enroll. And when you enroll, you actually get some bonuses that you can start to dig into right away, which include a mastery class from Christopher, an excerpt from his book, and then also a discount on a digital calendar that you can actually download and put into like your Google Calendar that gives you all the astrological information for each day.
Wow.
So lots of really cool things, and we're very excited about it. So, all right, we have our week ahead. So we're at February 21st to February 27th. Last week was really big astrology. Like I think everybody felt it. Like it was a lot going on in the sky. Right. So what's happening this week? Are we still in that mode, or are things mellowing out at all?
We want to head in the mellowing out direction.
Okay, we're heading there, but we're not quite there yet.
We're not quite there yet. I think that it's a very agitated sky. Okay, it's an agitated sky because we have Mars and Venus still very close to one another. And Mars is exalted in the astrological sign of Capricorn. And exaltation refers to a planetary dignity. And basically what it says is that Mars is most celebrated. You know, that anything Marsy is celebrated and seen as a good thing. Now, when you're talking about the more noble qualities of Mars, they are good things like personal self-sacrifice and doing what's right for the good of the group, rushing to the rescue, standing on principle that everyone else is disagreeing, defending the people who can't defend themselves. This is the whole chevalier, the whole chivalric code comes from Mars, whether that was laying your cape on a puddle for, the lady to like walk across so she didn't muddy her slippers, to rescuing said lady from a dragon, or, and nowadays it's like, opening the door and letting, the other person go through, and, chivalric code, things that are done that are honorable. Okay, and so these are the heightened expressions, the most lovely positive expressions of Mars, is this kind of nobility and putting yourself at the service of those who cannot help themselves and coming to their rescue or giving them protection or escorting them. Okay, so this is Mars in its best qualities, its most ennobling form. But exaltation can also mean Mars let loose, okay, across the sky. And Mars has some not so flattering aspects, which is, doing anything to win, doing whatever it takes to achieve your goal. It's really into stamping on other people's feet and sharp elbows. And, I don't know if everyone still watches roller derby. Like, I grew up with roller derby.
I don't know. Do you guys watch roller derby? Is this a thing?
I know that they still do some roller derby, but when I was a kid growing up, okay, roller derby was, a whole bunch of these like buff women, like skating around and like, knocking each other and throwing each other over the, rails, and all these sorts of things. It was like, inspired the film Rollerball, where, they had to change it to guys and it wasn't as much fun because, the women were like fierce and like really, so, but this is Mars. It's, roller derby. It's, sharp elbows and knocking everyone out of the way and doing whatever it takes. And what sort of directs or manages Mars energy are things like good sportsmanship, that you give your best out in the arena or the game, but you don't, step on the loser or whatever. You salute, the team that doesn't win, or your rival or your opponent. You salute them and you say, that was well played, or that was well done, or that was well engaged. And so all of these things fall within the spectrum of Mars. But right now, Mars is very, very aggressive in the sky. And that is working in conjunction with Venus being so close to Mars. Now, Venus in Capricorn doesn't have a dignity like, for instance, Mars does. Mars gets an extra, bump being in Capricorn. But Venus is a morning star right now. And there was some of this in Mesopotamian lore, but actually it's Mesoamerican that really emphasized Venus as a morning star as being connected to war and to pestilence. So Venus was sort of given a very negative attribute in her morning star vocation, or her morning star situation, or her morning star glamour wear. Okay, so she gets these attributes, and so this is what's really coming through the sky right now. And so when you have them so close, they really just moved out of a conjunction, but they're still in a conjunction. When planets are joined, they are joined. Okay, it's just like conjunction, junction. What's your function? If you remember Schoolhouse Rock, it's joining things with an and or an or whatever. So the planets themselves are joined. And when you have Venus and Mars together in Capricorn, there's always this feeling of, what was I too much? Was I too pushy? Was I too, in their face, or was I not enough? Was I not enough pushy? Was I not enough in their face? You know, because the Mars is like getting you to be in the face, and Venus is like, don't be so in the face. You know, so when they're together, there's no distance, you know, so it's hard to really separate them. And so it's this constant sense of like, really what it gets down to is maybe not knowing your own strength. You know, am I too in your face, or not enough in your face? And so there can be a lot of this that's going on. And with them forming a sextile to Neptune this week, and that's going to be taking place on February 23rd, when Mars forms a sextile to Neptune, and then on February 24th, when Venus forms a sextile to Neptune. What's really nice about this, I'm a huge sextile fan, okay, because sextiles broker the energies between planets. They broker the agreements that take place between planets, okay? Planets, by their aspects, can take on different attitudes with each other. They can be like, we're joined together in this fight, or we're fighting, or I love and adore you, or I'm not talking to you, you know, so planets are always changing their relationship to one another in the sky. That's why astrologers always talk about aspects and things like that. But what's lovely about a sextile is that a sextile almost sets up this sort of go-between energy between the planets, where they're going back and forth, trying to figure out a fit, trying to figure out how they're going to work with each other. And what happens with the sextile, and a sextile will involve planets and signs of like gender. That's why it's called a sextile. Okay, they're same sex in terms of their elemental gender. Capricorn is an earth sign. Pisces is a water sign, so they're same sex. Okay, they get each other in this regard. What takes place here is that Neptune in Pisces is kind of putting everyone into a mindset and a heart set of being receptive. Okay, of being receptive and open to moving towards something that's not going to be so inflamed. Okay, moving towards something that's not going to be so combative, something that's not going to be so incendiary. Okay, we don't get a lot of opportunities with the passage of the planets for this to kind of get set up. Okay, so again, the planets aren't telling you what to do. They're not like, you know, be nice, you know, or anything like that. But they're kind of like, because Neptune is so subtle in the shift of the waters. Okay, Neptune really rules over our unconscious waters. It's rules over our collective imagination, our collective dreaming. Neptune's kind of like softening the edge of the Mars here, and it's kind of like saying, what are you really getting out of this? You know, type of thing. Like, do you really need to be so angry? Do you really need to hold this grudge? Do you really need? And so it's almost like, you know, think of Mars as a clenched fist, and Neptune is like almost putting its hand on your fist and giving you a kiss and a rub, and just kind of like getting you to open up the clenched fist so that it isn't so shut off, so that it isn't so knotted. Now, if Mars were in a different sign, all right, other than Capricorn, it might react negatively to that. It might be like, get your hands off my wrist, you know, I didn't ask for you, whatever, and, you know, might get Mersey again or whatever. But because it's in Neptune, it's really kind of like there's a very nice coaxing. There's a nice sort of little hand massage that's going on to getting the clenched fist to open up, to getting the mind space to open up, to getting the heart space to open up. But this isn't going to be just done in a broad stroke. You know, Pisces, one of the beautiful aspects that Pisces has as a sign, something that's conceivable within the archetypal vocabulary of Pisces, is the tall order of forgiveness. Okay, and forgiveness is a tall order. It's meant to be a tall order. Okay, because it's meant to get you to go past what feels comfortable or your own pursuits. Okay. And forgiveness isn't just like, oh, you get a gold star for having been forgiving. Forgiveness is based on having compassion and suffering for compassion and sympathy for someone who's done you wrong. Okay. You cannot forgive unless you can imagine or have a feeling for what it must have been like to be in that position, to basically have walked a couple of miles in those moccasins. Okay. And that's where forgiveness really, and that's why forgiveness takes such a long time. Not all of us can, we're angry, we want justice, something like this, and so we close our hearts and we don't want to be forgiving. We want justice. We want an eye for an eye, something along those lines. But, if you look at history, justice and mercy are two very different things. Okay. And so this idea of moving from a sense of having been wronged to a sense of mercy or to a sense of understanding, this is something that becomes conceivable in the zodiac sign of Pisces. Pisces can be a lot of other, darker things. All signs are going to run the gamut from the light to the dark. Okay, there's no such thing as a good or a bad sign. Okay, but Pisces within its realm, has this promise of forgiveness. And so what we may be experiencing is not so much like, oh, I'm being faced with a tall order of forgiveness, I have to forgive, and I don't feel like forgive. That's not what we're facing. What we're facing is almost this kind of like gentle stroke of Neptune across our brow, or cradling, the face in its palms, and this sort of invitation to move past the grudge and to imagine something different. Okay, something more forgiving. Not necessarily, you don't have to forgive, but maybe something more forgiving. Now, the disposition of Capricorn comes into play because a planet doesn't operate outside of a sign. So the disposition of Capricorn comes into play. And so one's disposition might be Capricornian, which is skeptical, or cynical, which is, yeah, right. What are you getting out of my being so forgiving? Like, how are you getting off the hook, or what are you getting out of this? Or yeah, I can be forgiving, and then I set myself up for what? So that Capricornian, polite society calls it caution, but it's really skepticism. Okay. That Capricornian skepticism can come out. Remember, Mars is exalted in the zodiac sign of Capricorn. So it's going to be on edge about that sort of thing. Like, yeah, right. But that Neptunian energy is still very strong. So the sextile really works more like a suggestion. Okay. It's not a command. It's not a dictate. It's not an ultimatum. It's a suggestion. And we've all had those conversations with friends or loved ones of like, where all of a sudden it's like, why are you still, are you still really that upset? Or is it still really that big? And we might say to a confidant or someone that we trust, no, actually, no, I'm not. But if I understood where they were coming from, or I don't want them to get away with this, or I don't, so there's a sort of softening quality that's taking place here. And so what the stars in their courses are offering us is an opportunity to move through that. Okay. And not to embrace it as a generic thing, like I'm going to now be a really super duper. No, it's not that. It's to do it intimately. It's a sextile. Okay, meaning that the aspect is Venusian in nature. Okay, Venus in her benevolence is not like Jupiter in his benevolence. Jupiter benevolence is, what's good for the whole community, what's good for everyone. Venus is one-to-one. She's intimate. Okay, so Venus is involved here. The sextile is the nature of Venus. So Venus is saying, no, this is intimate conversations. This is that one person that you swore you'd never talk to again, or that one person that's ostracized you, or that one person that you felt ostracized by, or that you felt rejected by. That's so it's a one-on-one type of energy, and it's something that the sextile is inviting you to sort of put down the burden of a grudge, put down, the refusal to see another point of view, to unclench the fist and open it up to the calming and the comforting hand, and what we're kind of getting from this is a life free of that. The other person might not be able to meet us on that. Okay. The other person might not be able to say that's okay, or I'm going to let this bygone. The other person might even be like, what are you doing? or whatever. But the thing is, we did it. We moved into that place and we left that door open. We left that window open. We kept that light on, in the middle of the night, for that person to find. Maybe they don't find it this week. Maybe they find it next week. Maybe they find it next month. Maybe they find it years from now. I mean, how many times have you had someone look you up, and say, hi, you probably don't remember me, but, I really sort of like wanted to make up for, I mean, like it happens. Actually, it happened before social media, but it happens a lot now, where people want to make up for things that have been done before, where they're asking for forgiveness, where they're asking for a pardon, where they want to check in and see if you're okay. That doesn't mean you're going to be besties or this person's going to be a part of your life, but it's an atonement. It's an atonement that's taking place. And one of the most beautiful things about these sextiles to Neptune is that opportunity for atonement. Okay. Not based on making sure that the other person's atoning you too. There's no scorecard here, but it's finding peace with that person or the experience of the person. But what it is that it's taking the grudge off your shoulders. It's opening the clenched fist. It's not living with something that can become so toxic, but there's a process for that. We can't just wish it away or do a mantra or light a candle. There's a personal process for that. Some of us may be very fast with it. Pisceans are notoriously fast with it. They're like, we're fighting. Oh, okay. Well, not a big deal or whatever. I mean, they can be very easy with that, Other signs, cannot get it. Like, we're fighting. Oh, and then other signs are like, well, you're asking me to relinquish a grudge that I've been holding for 35 years. I'm going to have to think about that. So these are the things that happen. And it's interesting. It just what sort of flashed in my mind, films and movies are ruled by Neptune. In fact, photography is basically invented around the time that Neptune is discovered. I mean, this is something as astrologers we look for with modern planets. It's like, when do they emerge and what was going on culturally or socially at the time that they emerged? And film and photography had the spectral quality. You could capture an image, you could reproduce it, but it could also fade away very quickly, and so, you had to do film processing or whatever to capture, to hold the image. And even with Kodak film or something, if you don't store those images correctly, they can begin to disappear because of the sun or whatever. So there was always sort of this spectral quality here. But we can go to a film, we can go to, the dark of a theater and watch a film, or in our own home, we watch a film and think of the way that a film can move you, that the film sort of reaches through, you become so engaged and it moves you emotionally. It can excite or thrill you, but it can also make you weep and make you cry. And, maybe you return to it again and again. It's a favorite film. This is Neptune. To be able to bathe in these waters, to revel in these images that flash through. This is what Neptune can do. And I like to bring up film. Another medium of Neptune, of course, is music, where it just moves what's going on with you emotionally. You can be like, I had a crummy day, but dance floor, I'm going to rock out, But Neptune has the ability to move the waters of our unconscious and our feeling life and our memory. And so this is something that I would invite you to do. There are going to be situations that are arising this week where, you're going to be thinking about clenched fist versus open hand. Okay. And this is something that is going to be very apparent in this week. And again, it's not, something that you do so that you get good citizenship. it's actually putting you in the heart space and the mind space where you could actually conceive of doing that, and then coming from a place in which it would be nice if the other person gets it, but if the other person doesn't get it, that's not a deal breaker. You got it. You are in that place. It's not like you reach this place. You are in that place, and you are in that place now, and you can carry that. And again, planets in their courses will offer us these different open windows, shut windows, open doors, closed doors, these different opportunities. And this week, especially with the run up to what could be a very sort of challenging Mars Pluto conjunction and Venus Pluto conjunction, which will be taking place on March 2nd and March 3rd. We have a lot of these sextiles taking place right now. And so these sextiles are giving us these opportunities to make amends, to make peace, to forge truce, peace treaties, and to build bridges. And if we're being given those opportunities and they're fulfilling experiences, don't you want to take them?
Wow, Christopher. So much there. And it's amazing how accurate or spot on it is. I literally have a situation in my life right now where it's a choice point. I can either hang on to the feeling of rejection and ostracization. Is that a word? I can either do that.
Pronounce one, but it is.
Yes, I can do that. Like, that is definitely on the table as an option.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can do, I love this, this softening that you're talking about, and doing it without attachment, knowing that the other person may not change the external situation at all. It
Mm-hmm.
may be exactly the same. It may look exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
But I have an opportunity to change how I feel towards it. And
Mm-hmm.
I have an opportunity to change how I feel even towards the person involved. I can hang on and keep that clenched fist or let that go. And one of the things as you were speaking, I was thinking it's almost like an opportunity to live, to foreshadow and anticipate having no regrets or having regrets.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like looking at the situation going, if I do this, will I regret it? If I don't do this, will I regret it? And
Right.
I love thinking about that too. Sometimes it's like, if this person was gone tomorrow, how would I feel about the way I handled this situation right now?
Right.
And so then it's sometimes for me, it's easier to take sort of a higher position with that. I don't mean higher, better. I just mean,
Right.
take the high road, and just kind of let it go. It's like, God, what at the end of the day, does any of this really matter? Can I let this go?
Yeah.
And I'm also really resonating with what you're saying about the Capricorn, sort of the skeptical, cautious, and kind of like, well, why should I? Why don't they? Like, they're the one who hurt me.
Always me, right? Why is it?
Well, and they hurt me. Like, why should I be the one that like bridges the gap?
Mm-hmm.
And I often say to my daughters, someone has to do it,
Right.
or else it'll just remain. But and that could be you. Like, you could just decide that that's me. I'm going to be the one to bridge the gap, or not. Both options are valid.
Right.
But yeah, and some of the things you were saying about, so basically what I'm hearing in terms of the story arc of the week is that we have Mars and Venus just coming out of a conjunction. Mars exalted, so still the potential for the shadowy part of Mars, which includes, just doing anything to win, whatever it takes, even if that means hurting other people in the process. It's like the goal is win.
Right.
At all cost, right?
Right.
And so that's kind of available in the sky. And then you have Venus as a morning star, which kind of compounds that warrior-like energy. And then they're moving into this sextile with Neptune, which, so here we have this like aggressive sort of energy, but then on the 23rd and 24th, we have the sextile energy really softening it. And giving the opportunity to soften. But again, like you said, this is a choice. This is a choice. And we have the energy supporting us to do these things. We don't have to, but we can. And one of the things when you were talking about Mars, and I was thinking, because my love loves Marvel comics.
Right.
So we're often watching, like, from the time he was a little boy, he would sit under, literally sit under an apple tree reading his Marvel comic books. And
Ferdinand the Ball.
Yes,
He's
exactly.
under the tree with his comics.
Totally, exactly. And but one of the things that comes up a lot with the superheroes, because I'm thinking of Mars, and the higher expression of Mars is very superhero. Yeah. But the words honor, dignity, respect. So when Mars is in that exalted place, there is that chivalry, and there is that, like, coming to the rescue. And same with Venus in the morning star, right? Because when you were speaking about her, I was thinking, oh, she's like Wonder Woman.
She is, in that, right?
Yeah, exactly. So she's a warrior, but she can be a warrior for love, and she could be,
a warrior for peace. Yeah,
a warrior for peace, right? So we have that energy. Then we have the sextile with Neptune, and bringing in these themes of forgiveness, compassion, sympathy for someone who has done you wrong, mercy, understanding, moving past the grudge. And like you said, a sextile is a suggestion.
Right. It's a suggestion.
It's a suggestion. I love that. It's like, here's a suggestion. Here's a way you could handle this. It might feel really nice,
Right. Well, I was also thinking as you're talking, I think that Neptune sextiling is actually bringing out the more ennobling. It has almost ennobling energy, because if you're going to be the person, like, why do I have to take the high road? But you're going to be the person who takes the high road, right? That's Mars. That's the courage. If you're going to be the person who's practicing good sportsmanship, honoring, someone who's an opponent, that's Mars again. So there's really almost like this ennobling quality that's taking place with the sextile, because Mars can be quite feisty about giving ground or appearing weak or soft, but here with the Capricorn and the Pisces, what both signs understand is how weakness is strength. They understand that, how fear can be courageous. They get that. Other dispositions might be like, no, it's fear or courage, or you have to be strong, not weak, but this is something in which they both understand how suffering can lead to that, and how through disappointment can lead to that, or rejection can lead to that it doesn't turn vengeful, that it can actually make you more compassionate. There's that, what's that famous phrase? Every saint was once a sinner, so there's that understanding with the two energies, when they come together. And so it's just this suggestion, this movement of the water of, like, how about this as an idea? And how about doing it now or this week?
Right. Whew. Okay. And it really is strength. I mean, it really, to do those, to extend the olive branch, to, put the bridge down and say, look, it's okay. Like, it's okay. And I forgive you. And I understand where you're coming from. I understand, and it's okay.
Yeah.
And I love you. And I love you still. And then they can choose. Then they can choose how they want to respond.
And I'm also thinking of just the way you're bringing up some of those terms, how much, again, think of our society, how much we're like, how can you greet this person back? You're enabling. How can you take this person back? You're just continuing this vicious cycle. You need to put down boundaries. You need to put yourself first. There's all this triumphing around not doing that, and I think what people miss, and why forgiveness, as it's taught in our religious literature, is such a tall order, is that it takes so much love and strength, that taking back is not a weak thing. it can be a good thing. You're struggling to understand, or maybe you're going through this process because you still haven't worked it out yet, whatever. But you know, when you're coming from a place of trying to love and understand, you know, Sir Walter Raleigh is the one who actually takes his cape and puts it across the puddle for Queen Elizabeth to stride across. Well, that's not a welcome mat. You know, he wasn't a welcome mat. You know, that might be seen as like, oh, he put that down and now he's a welcome mat. People can walk all over him and whatever. No, to be able to put down that bridge, as you said, or to lay that cape down, it doesn't turn you into a doormat. Okay, that's probably the word I was looking for. It doesn't turn you into a doormat. It's a noble thing to do, and it comes from a place of nobility and strength, and it actually brings out the beauty of Mars. I mean, this is something that Mars does, which is pretty much exclusive to the planet.
Wow, it's compelling. It's a compelling thought because it's all in the energy with which you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can do the thing you were talking about before, where it's like you just let anybody walk all over you, and you know, make up a story for why they're so mean to you, and you forgive things and you forgive and stay in situations where it probably would be better for you to move on. You can still forgive the person, but you don't need to stay in the situation. So I think we do get these things muddied and muddled, but what you just described, it's the energy of a noble gesture that is coming from the heart, that is coming from a place of strength and self-respect.
Right.
Self-respect, really.
Right.
It is very different than this other picture of the person who lets everybody walk all over them and has no strength in which to stand in when they are wronged.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that strength doesn't mean that it has to be combative. You know, it's just like, it's just that clear. No, like this does not work for me. It does not. And I will now be leaving. I can still love you, but I'm not going to be here anymore. So
absolutely.
It's completely energetic, the nuance though, right?
Right. Yeah, yes. Absolutely. And I'm not going to, you know, and, you know, I may have done everything I could and I can't do anything more or whatever. Yes. And that comes from a place of love.
Right.
You know, it's like, I love you so much that I can't do anything more. You know, it's not, I love you so much, I'm going to annihilate myself. You know, no.
Yes.
You know, it's that can be a place of that as well. But I think a lot of times there's a tendency to, you know, don't be a victim, don't be an enabler, don't be whatever. And we miss what you were bringing up, the nuances of that love and that quiet strength. You know? Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I love this. Okay. So we have that all happening. Is there anything else that we need to be aware of this week?
The other thing to keep in mind this week is that we have Mercury-Uranus square. Okay, and that will be taking place on February 24th as well. And that Mercury-Uranus square is kind of a wake-up call in a way, you know. It's going to be this really realization of what happens when, you know, what happens when, in following conventional wisdom, convention isn't wise anymore. Okay, so that's the idea. What I kind of like sat down with this one, and I wanted to get the idea of that flip, you know, because there can be a conventional wisdom quality to one part of this equation, and then there can be actually, I think, you know, questioning or what is conventional wisdom is actually a very Uranian Taurus thing right now. But it's the Mercury in Aquarius, you know, moving into the square, which is saying, well, what do you do when convention isn't wise anymore? You know, when you have to step outside the herd, you know, which can be, you know, sorry, Taurus is bulls. Cattle, you know, but what happens when the convention isn't wise anymore? And so, you know, for people born under the Mercury signs like Gemini and Virgo, or the fixed signs like Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, that might be something that's really hitting very strongly this week. Of like, I had always followed this, believing that this was wise and good, and it's what a number of people I know also did, and we all feel like this was wise and good. But what happens when I'm getting this wake up? Because whenever you're dealing with Uranus, it could be a wake up call. What happens when I'm waking up to the fact that this might not be so wise anymore, and that can be a frightening position to be in, because all of a sudden you don't feel on the same page with people that you feel close to, either emotionally or in business or in your neighborhood, and that sort of brings in that sort of outsider status, which we always see when the Saturn signs are triggered, like Aquarius and Capricorn. These are the signs that really are about the outsider. Okay, so this kind of wake up call of like, this might not be, and then what do I do with that? So one thing, for instance, might be if we were to combine the different ideas, let's say you're find yourself taking back someone or forgiving someone that everyone in your life said was a creep or a horrible person, and then all of a sudden they're like, how can you do that? I thought I knew you. I thought, you were like better than that, or something like that, so you might find yourself, I'm just playing around with an example, but you might find yourself on the outside, of what had been okay thinking. Okay. And you might find yourself in a dilemma, like, how invested am I in this? Do I want to go further? And, because it's Mercury, it's not really a call to action yet, but it's Mercury, which is like, I don't know, that doesn't sit right with me. I don't, Mercury's always questioning. It's like, a good idea, so that might be something that really comes up. And then also weighing, does that put me outside of what everyone else thinks, and how do I feel about that? So that might be something that really shows up.
I love this idea of exploring what conventional wisdom is.
Mm-hmm.
Right when you said conventional wisdom, I went, what is conventional wisdom? And isn't conventional wisdom shifting all the time? And isn't conventional wisdom very cultural and maybe even familial? And my conventional wisdom could be very different than yours. And so I think tapping into or tuning into what you've always taken for granted as conventional wisdom, like, yes, that's just the way it is, like, or that's just the way we do things. And then when this situation comes up, whatever it is, where Uranus comes and knocks at the door of that wisdom saying, is that wise? Is that what's actually best for you? Does that actually bring you any level of fulfillment or satisfaction?
Right.
To allow yourself to play with, well, maybe not. Like, maybe not. And, Christopher, I have a 13 and 10-year-old daughter. Okay. And we're doing these really cool rites of passage circles with the young women as they are growing into their womanhood. And it's so amazing to be doing this. One of the things I noticed is that being an outcast or being on the outside of the circle, whatever that is terrifying.
It is
for young people. And we were all young people at one point, and we still have that young person in us who's like, oh my gosh, no, like, what's going to happen? It feels so unsafe. It feels so uncertain. And there is such a wisdom in being okay with that sometimes. Yeah. Being okay, especially if it's more in alignment with who you actually are. Yeah. So one of the things we're doing is, at least I'm doing it with my daughters, is when someone calls them weird, I say, congratulations. That's great. That's amazing. Like,
T-shirt.
Yeah, why would you aspire to be normal?
Right.
Why is that the aspiration? Right.
Right.
So I think, but we all, I think so many of us, I mean, maybe depending on your chart, we probably have varying degrees of being okay with being an outsider. But if questioning conventional wisdom would put you on the outside or outskirts of convention,
right,
that's so bad. Like, what does convention breed? And do you actually want that outcome? Or You want a different outcome than what the conventional wisdom breeds, right?
Right, right, right. And it's funny when you were saying, what's conventional wisdom? I was like, anyone's guess.
Yes, exactly. Anyone's guess. Well, I think everybody would answer somewhat differently.
Yeah,
To that.
well, because because we're all living in different parts of society, and this is a wonderful thing about astrology. We're all from different planets.
Right.
Yes,
yes, we are from different planets.
It's
yes.
like, I'm born under Saturn, I'm born under Venus. We're all from different planets, and so that's the lovely thing that astrology can bring. But yeah, and again, because of the Mercury square, the Mercury is connected to the Aquarius, so it's kind of following Uranus in the square. It's just beginning in a Mercury way this week. It's just sort of like, well, what is it? It's the question or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's going to amp up, of course, as we get to the Mars-Uranus square, which is in mid-March. But
in March,
those are the things to. Yeah.
We're getting an opportunity to think about it a little bit, marinate in the idea of it for now.
You're getting the first hints.
First hints. Okay, fascinating. All right, so what would you say then is the theme for the week?
I think my original idea was get over yourself as a theme, but I think it's really opening up the clenched fist.
Opening up the clenched fist.
Opening up the clenched fist, or relaxing the clenched fist, opening the clenched fist. I would say that that's really the theme of the week, and yeah, that's the gesture of the week.
Okay. And if we had to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not intense at all, and 10 being the most intensity that we could possibly have, where would you put this week on that scale?
I'd like to sort of split screen it if it's possible.
Yeah, you could do whatever you want.
In terms of day-to-day circumstances, I would give it a 3. But in terms of profundity, I would give it a 9.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's so interesting. So we may be having very profound, almost internal experiences, but from the outside, it would look like a 3. It's not. It's just. Yeah. It's easy-ish and flowing.
Someone's kneeling down to pray, and that looks like, okay, someone in prayer, but we don't know what those prayers are.
Oh,
yes. The person is saying and what they're experiencing.
Right.
That might be a chapel, that's going on inside, so that's how I would put it.
Gosh, I love you. Thank you so much, Christopher. You are so beautiful. You're such an incredible teacher, and you have so much wisdom for all of us. Thank you so much for dedicating your life and your time and your energy to sharing these things with us. We're so blessed to have you in this community, and I am so grateful for you.
I'm so blessed that you created this community. I mean, what a beautiful community that you've created. It's just, I count my blessings every day, and you're always in the top.
Wow, thank you. Gosh, that's amazing. And I have an incredible team that helps us do this whole entire community.
It's talk about angels.
I know.
Singing choirs of angels.
Completely. Yes.
Amazing people that you work with. Yeah.
If you love Christopher's style, if you want to spend 3 weeks learning from him in a more you're gonna have an experience. You're gonna have a journey with Christopher. It's gonna take you from the history of how astrology actually is a calendar, all the way through the nuts and bolts of what that means, and then all the way to the conclusion of you being able to apply this in your life. So that is available to you, again, starting March 3rd, but enrollment is open now. Go to astrologyhub.com/cosmic calendar. Check it out. See if that's right for you. And we would absolutely love to have you in class for that. Yeah. Yes. And every week you'll get a recorded module. The modules are released on Thursdays. You have the weekend and the beginning of the week to study that. Watch it, absorb it, try it on. And then on Wednesdays, we're having the live Q&A. Is it Wednesday? I think so. Wednesday or Thursday. Shoot. The schedule is on that page. But then you'll have a live Q&A with Christopher where you can bring your questions and engage with him, again, in a more intimate setting. And we can't answer every question, but you have the chance of your question getting answered.
We will give it a try.
We will give it a try. And the thing that we do is we collect all the questions and then we create categories. So your category of question will be answered. So we definitely cover as much as we can. And you get some great bonuses, like I mentioned before, some great supplemental materials that go with the course. And it's going to be an awesome experience. So again, astrologyhub.com/cosmic calendar. And we will see you in class soon. And we'll see you throughout the week on this podcast. Christopher, thank you.
Thank you, Amanda, so much. Thank you.
Adore you completely.
Adore you.
And thanks to all of you for being here, for being a part of our community, and for making astrology a part of your life. We'll catch you on the next episode. Take care.